Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Classroom 2.0 Live. We're so glad that you joined us today. I'm Kim Case, and I'm pleased to co-host today with Peggy George and Norman Constantini. Today we're going to be talking about student web radio broadcasts. And we have special guests Matt Montagne today with students Sam and Natalie with the Gator Radio Experience. Each week at the same time, we gather to discuss the technology tools and issues. Our broadcast consists of a 1-hour session that is recorded. The link to the full video, audio recording, and chat log will be posted to our Classroom 2.0 Live site at live.classroom20.com. The topic each week is posted on the Classroom 2.0 Live site so that you can be prepared with links, ideas, and tools that you'd like to share. A newbie question.
Just my audio here. I don't know if you've lost Kim or she just lost your audio.
Sorry, got disconnected. Let's try that again. Before we begin, I'd like to review some of the features that we will be using today in Illuminate. During today's session, we will be using and asking some poll questions. To cast your vote, we'll be using the check mark and the red X at the top window in the menu. You won't click or mark anything on the whiteboard at that time. Below the participant window is a hand with a green arrow on it. If you'd like to ask a question or share something, please raise your hand by clicking on that hand with the green arrow, and you'll be given the ability to use your microphone to speak. Next to the hand are two emoticons, the applause symbol and a thumbs down symbol. In the far right is a blue door. If you need to step away from your computer, please click on the blue door and we'll know that you're not available at that time. Below those symbols is the chat window. If you'd like to send a message to the room, you would type your message and click the send button. To send a message to this room, make sure the word "this room" is visible. And if you'd like to send a message to a specific person or a moderator, you would use the drop-down arrow to make your selection. Moderators are able to see all private messages throughout the session, so keep that in mind when sending messages. In the bottom left is the button to activate your microphone. Click the mic button to begin speaking, and be sure to click the mic button when you're finished speaking to deactivate your microphone. If you cannot see the chat whiteboard or you would like to resize the different windows, you can change the session layout. Click on View in the top menu. The layout is locked and you may need to click on the Layout Locked option to unlock this feature. You can then select the desired layout as shown on the right, or drag out the individual windows and resize them to fit your screen or your preferences. In a moment, we will be using the whiteboard tools to indicate our location. I apologize. I'm not sure why I keep losing my signal, but I'm back, and let's try this again. We offer closed captioning features with Tammy, and if you would let your friends know that are hearing impaired that we have that option, please let them know that they can attend our sessions and that they can access the closed captioning features by clicking the blue CC option in the toolbar, and then they'll be able to see the closed captioning text that Tammy is typing. And we thank Tammy for providing the closed captioning services for our hearing impaired guests. So thank you so much, Tammy. In a moment, we're going to be accessing and using the whiteboard tool, the laser pointer tool. The laser pointer tool is the blue wand with the red sunburst at the end. If everybody could please click on that laser pointer tool and then click their location on the whiteboard. Sometimes your little sunburst dial goes to the left. You may need to drag it over a little bit to the right to indicate your location on the map. And I'm seeing lots and lots of people throughout the United States, people in Canada, Europe, Asia, locations in the ocean. But it's great that you've joined us today. And we really appreciate that you've taken time to join us today. And we're grateful that you're taking your Saturday or possibly Sunday, depending on where you are in the world, to join us. So thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to our polling questions. And if you recall, we're going to be responding with by marking the green check in the very top menu and the red X in the top menu bar, and we won't be marking our answers in the on the slide. So if you could please respond now by answering with a green check or a red X. Have you ever listened to a student-created radio show? And if you've ever listened to Matt's show, then you can answer with a green check. And if you've not listened to a student-created radio show, then click the red X. And you'll click on those at the very top menu. And then I'll get the results in just a bit. And the results look like we have 37% of us have not listened to a student-created radio show, and 40% have listened to a student-created radio show. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next question, which is, have you ever produced a radio show with students? Have you personally ever produced a radio show with students? If you have, click the green check, and if you have not, click the red X in the top menu bar. I'll give you just a bit more time to ring in, everyone, and then I'll go ahead and get the results. And it looks like 67% have not, and 13% in the room have created and produced a radio show with students. Excellent. So hopefully by the end of the show, that number would change. And we'll have the skills to do so. So let's go on to third poll question. Have you ever created an online interactive webcast, either in audio or video? If you have created an online interactive webcast that was in audio or video format, please click the green check. If you have not created an online interactive webcast that was featuring audio or video, then click the red X. I'll give a bit more time and then we'll post the results. And 48% have not, and about 38% have. So it's a pretty good majority that have, and almost half have not So by the end of the show, we'll have some great tips on how to create web broadcasts and student web radio. And we have a really excellent guest today with students. And I'm so excited. And I'm going to pass the baton to Lorna, who's going to introduce our special guest today and talk about what is Gator Radio and why would I want to create and broadcast a student radio show. Lorna, take it away.
Thanks very much, Kim. Thank you very much, Kim. I'm pretty excited here to be introducing our guest today. He's a very good friend of mine, and his history, I know that he has some great experiences, and the Webcast Academy, I believe, is where Matt started all this. And again, we have to thank Jeff Lebo, who is the room, for his direction and his inspiration in creating these kinds of activities. And I'm really going to let Matt explain the newbie question, but I just want to take a few minutes to give you some background on Matt for those of you who might not have met him before. He graduated from the University of Wisconsin back in 1994. I know you're an old guy now, Matt. And he's been part of the World Bridges community and participating in a tremendous number of the EdTech Talk webcasts, and specifically, Matt and I are the co-hosts for the Parents as Partners webcast. He is currently at Castilla School in Palo Alto, and he works with teachers and students in grade 6 and 12, and I think that's his venue today to talk about and introduce his students with us today. He's also been extremely involved in something called EarthCast. It's a 24-hour webcast, and I know that Matt's going to give you some more details on that. You're going to have a great experience today, because not only is Matt a technical savvy person, he's a great teacher who's taken that technology just to another level with his creative abilities and created the Gator Talk radio and the experience that goes with it. I want to thank you, Matt, for joining us, and turn the microphone over to you.
Okay, sure. Well, thanks for that really nice introduction, and thanks so much to the entire Classroom 2.0 team. Everybody kind of in the world of education, so I think it's just awesome, and Gator Radio experience is certainly happy participating today. So to tackle the newbie question of the week, what is Gator Radio and why would I want a student? I'm just going to ask real quick, just thinking out loud, how do I advance these slides, Kim?
Okay, Matt, go ahead. Top of the screen, Matt, see the forward and back arrows beside newbie question just to the left? You see the forward and back arrows?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so just the middle ones, one at a time. There you go. Great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, you know what? I think, we will tackle the newbie question early on in this presentation. Go ahead, I suppose, and get right into it. We'll deal with, what is Gator Radio and why would I do a radio show? But I think I have to do that in the context of exactly what. I think Peggy asked the question, what's the difference between a webcast, a radio broadcast, and I would throw podcasts in there as well. There's a lot in there, and I just want to start out by perhaps saying what's unique about what our students are doing at Castilla School. And so this is our Gator Radio logo. Early on, we started the Gator Radio experience this past fall, so the fall of 2008. That was our kind of had this idea, and then our first broadcast was at the end of October. One of the early things we did in our broadcast was we had a competition for a logo. So we asked our listeners to participate in a logo competition. And, well, we only got one logo submitted, and we were very fortunate that our logo was really, really cute. So, yes, somebody asked why the Gators. We are the Castilla Gators. That is our nickname. So this is the logo. This is our logo, and it was one of those fun little things that when we started this project, we had no idea the kinds of things that we could put into it and talk about. And this kind of little logo competition was a fun thing for us. We just wanted to briefly mention this project has led to all sorts of different opportunities for our students. And I actually presented down at NCSS, the National Social Studies Teachers Conference in Houston this past fall of 2008. And I was able to bring a couple of our Gator Radio students into that presentation to speak with the attendees of that session. And this is a screenshot of two of our Gator Radio Experience team members participating and sharing about the Gator Radio Experience and how it connects to world culture studies of modern world cultures and that sort of thing. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But we've also been fortunate enough to participate just a couple weeks ago with EdTech Talks, Teachers Teaching Teachers, and we had several students from the Gator Radio Experience talking with Paul Allison students from his school out in New York City who are thinking about doing a live radio show as well. So that was it was certainly fun to participate in Teachers Teaching Teachers, and again, we're happy to be here on Classroom 2.0 Live now. Jeff Lebo calls this our end of the year tour. So we're happy to be here on Classroom 2.0 Live to talk about what the Gator Radio Experience is all about. What is live interactive student webcasting? What does it mean? So our the date that is really important for us is this date right here, Wednesday, October 29th, 2008. It was our very first broadcast. We had several meetings leading up to this broadcast, but this was when the project actually started. And since that very first broadcast, we've had 16 more. I think we've had a total of 17 live broadcasts, most of which are actually archived in the form of podcasts over at our website, which is in the Share tabs. Want to differentiate, and I think this leads to Peggy's question to a certain degree. And just so everybody knows, I want to get to the real interesting guest here in a moment, and that's Sam. She's waiting patiently in the chat room and at home on her computer listening in. But I just want to kind of to explain a little bit more about what the project's all about. So this is actually live broadcasting. So our students get together and they connect and we broadcast live. We'll talk about the mechanics of that in a moment. But I wanted to differentiate between live broadcasting, kind of like what we're doing here in Illuminate right now, and podcasting. So podcasting, there are many wonderful podcasts out there with really high production quality coming from people of all ages, young to old. Perhaps if you listen to our podcast, you might be critical of the production quality. Just know that we do very little post-production work and that we are actually producing our shows live, and we're recording those and then posting those up. Some of the post-production, kind of cleaning up the audio, is something that's on our to-do list for the future. So down the road, we hope to perhaps clean up our audio files a little better so the podcasts are a little tighter. But again, just wanted to differentiate. This is what we do is actually live. We're on-air live broadcasting. And these are some of the tools we use. We use a variety of low and either low or no cost tools, which is, I think, important for our mission. The Gator Radio Experience, if you listen to it, you might think we have a large budget, but we don't. We don't actually have a budget at all. We use Skype, and oftentimes we use Skype out, so it's important that the producer has Skype minutes in his or her account so we can Skype out to cell phones and landlines and that sort of thing. But that's one of the few costs. We'll talk quite a bit about these various tools through this presentation, but Google Docs is a key collaboration space for the students that work on this project. It's where we do the script, and we have a couple screenshots later on in this presentation of the script that we use to build up our shows. So a lot of these tools are going to be quite familiar. We keep our podcasts and show notes and blog over at Blogger. If you go to iTunes and you do a search for Gator Radio Experience, you'll see our collection of podcasts, and We have a Facebook group as well, although I think we accidentally set the Facebook group up so it was only open to Castanea students. So we're working on these things. And we have a Twitter account too, which is getting a little more traction and a few more followers. And you can follow us at twitter.com/Gator_radio and some of these other tools as well. But all the tools aside, we certainly want to be here talking with you on Classroom 2.0 about this student internet radio project. If it were not for the community of people over at World Bridges, we just simply wouldn't be here. I would have no idea how to quote-unquote webcast using free and low and no-cost tools. The folks at World Bridges have done an unbelievable job of modeling some techniques and possibilities and providing some fairly bulletproof systems to use. You know, we're using 2 or 3 or 4 different software platforms, whether they're web-based or installed on your computer, and trying to get those to play well together can be tricky. And the folks over at World Bridges have really kind of come up with some fairly decent best practices, but at the same time constantly exploring new and emerging techniques as well. And the Webcast Academy is where you can actually go to learn about these kinds of techniques. And if you're interested in low and no cost webcasting, I highly recommend. We'll talk a little bit about the Webcast Academy in a bit. And of course, EdTech Talk is just another one of the places. We've tried to emulate some of the good work that we've seen from the various shows over at EdTech Talk. So what is our show? It is mostly opinion and editorial. So this is done mostly because our students are extraordinarily busy. We don't have a whole lot of time to do research on various topics. I wish we did. So what we do right now is we talk about the things that our kids have a lot of experience with. And I have to say, they have a ton of experience with a lot of different things. They just blow me away every time they do a production. So we start out usually with an intro. We have interviews. We try to find somebody in some corner of the world that is willing to talk to us about something that they're passionate about. And through those interviews, we've gotten into a variety of wonderful cultural exchanges and that sort of thing, where students have been exposed to people in different situations from different cultures with different points of views and different takes on things. And I think that's really healthy for our students to get that perspective, to be able to get out of, we're in Palo Alto, California, so to kind of get out of our Palo Alto bubble. They also learn how to ask questions and follow-up questions in interviews. I know for those of you in the chat room, and we have quite a few of you who do webcasting, you know what I'm talking about here. When you're in a conversation where you can't see the person, you can't see their body language and that sort of thing, oftentimes it can be very, very difficult to kind of maintain the flow of a conversation. And our girls on this project are really doing a nice job of moderating some pretty fantastic interviews. They also love to do reviews, so they talk about the things that movies, music, books, technology. We've reviewed a lot of different things on the show, and we'll talk about some of the show topics in a moment. We have a little outro segment too, so that's one of our regular kind of segments. It's just wrapping up the show, and then usually what we do, just like a lot of the EdTech Talk shows have post shows, we have a fun little post show where we kind of stick around for, sometimes it's up to a half an hour actually, where we stick around and we kind of summarize our show and that sort of thing. I mentioned interviews earlier, and then we have a music segment. We're going to be talking with Sam Cecil, who's a Gator Radio Experience team member, and she's our music expert, really. I mean, it's unbelievable, her knowledge and skill, her knowledge and skills in the area of music and modern music distribution and that sort of thing. You'll be hearing from her momentarily. So I just wanted to point out, this is some of the tools that we use. This is the collaborative, the back end of the collaborative script. So you're getting kind of you're getting into the inner workings of the Gator Radio experience. So for all of you who took the time to join us in Classroom 2.0, you kind of get to take a look inside of the Gator Radio experience, so to speak. So this is our script. And we just have the script that's out there. I should point out, too, I think, I'm going to jump around here as only I can do. Before I'll come back to the script, I wanted to talk about how the show is actually conducted. So if these little blue heads and headsets and mics represent the various webcasters, we all connect from our homes via Skype. So we'll typically have 4 to 5 students on this Skype conference call, and of course I'll be on the Skype conference call as well. And then perhaps this person at the aquarium in this slide with the cell phone represents a remote participant. So this person would be, say, at an aquarium having a conversation, or could be anywhere having a conversation with us. And so we take that entire Skype conversation, which probably many of you have been on, group Skype conversations, and then we route it out here to the right. You'll see the little logo for the Webcast Academy, and there's an arrow pointing out to the right. We also take audio from my computer because I'm kind of I do the quote-unquote webcasting or the streaming. So Sam, who you're going to be hearing from in a moment, puts together this wonderful playlist to me and gets the MP3 files to me usually about 10 minutes before the show. No, I'm kidding. Sam's really on the ball, and she has the files to me well before the show. She's extremely organized. And then we're able to route that audio into the stream. And if I go to the next slide, you're going to see the interface that we actually use. And we do have a lot of, Jeff Lebo called them Gatorheads. We have a lot of Gatorheads in the audience today. Durf, Peggy, Kim, Jeff, I'm sure I'm leaving Sheila, a bunch of folks that have really been supportive in the educational technology community of this project. So this is the interface that we use. It's Ustream. I'm sure many of you have been in Ustream. We lightly password protect this channel so as to keep the trolls out, so to speak. And we haven't had any problems with people getting into this that aren't interested in being there or shouldn't be here. So we take that Skype call, we take the music from our music segment, and then we route it into this Ustream interface where we have a rich chat room with some chat that's related to our conversation and some that isn't. And with people who are 8 years old, I guess in some cases, all the way up to, I don't know how old, but younger people and older people and people from our school and people from across the U.S. and around the world listening in live, just like we have now here at the Classroom 2.0 Illuminate Room. I want to point out, too, that everybody, all of our students are at home when we broadcast. We typically broadcast at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time or 8 p.m. Pacific time. So we'll usually have about, like I mentioned earlier, 3 to 5 students on the broadcast connecting via Skype. When Sam connects with us, we usually bring Sam in via cell phone just because it's an easier way for her to connect. But we're all at home, and I think this is really key. It allows us to connect with regions of the world that we couldn't connect with during the school day. So a couple of the different places that we've been fortunate enough to connect with, and we'll talk about these later. We connected with Jenny Lucas and Amanda Ritter and Jess McCullough's students in Australia right as the Australian bushfires were going on. And sorry for the backpack blower in the background, but welcome to the world of live webcasting. So we're at home at 8 o'clock at night, and this gives us the opportunity to connect with people we wouldn't have the opportunity normally to connect with. This is another key feature of the Gator Radio experience. And perhaps some of you in the chat room get a little nervous or worried about this, or maybe less so people in the chat room, but people who aren't in the chat room and who aren't listening to the show get concerned about this. We have no face-to-face meetings for this project. All of our meetings happen via Skype. So yes, we have 2 live broadcasts each month, but in between those live broadcasts, we typically have 1 or 2 planning meetings. So these planning meetings are done via Skype, and as a matter of fact, it's gotten to the point where it doesn't bother me if somebody doesn't show up for a planning meeting. It's whoever's available for a planning meeting can show up for the planning meeting. We can kind of talk about some ideas for the upcoming show. Otherwise, we drop some emails to one another, and we always have access to the asynchronous planning space, our Google Doc. So there are no face-to-face meetings. And I don't do that just because we don't want to have face-to-face meetings, and I'm anti-face-to-face meetings. I mean, there's plenty of times in the hallways where I see students and it'll be like, oh yeah, we got Gator Radio coming up this week. Sam, do you have the music ready? Oh yeah, Mr. Montagne, sure, I have the music ready. But it's mostly done because our students are extraordinarily busy, and truthfully, I don't know how effective adding another face-to-face meeting for our students and for myself would be. So it just seems to work for us. So we do have a parental participation agreement, and I think we put that in the share tabs. We have early in this project, we had concern about students broadcasting live on the internet. I didn't have those concerns, but everybody could imagine the concerns that people can think of and that sort of thing. So we had a pretty, maybe you could think of it as a scary agreement, and I thought it kind of was a little bit scary. The language was pretty, I don't know, harsh. But so what I did was I called each one of the parents before this parental participation agreement went home and just said, hey, look, you're going to be getting this scary looking agreement. Just want to introduce myself. Here's what we're thinking about doing. And every single parent who I talked to thought it was a great idea. And they were, sure, my daughter can participate. We'd love for her to be participating in a live radio show. That sounds like a wonderful project. So the parents have been unbelievably supportive of it. Somebody asked how many students are in this project. I'm sorry, I'm not a very linear presenter at all, so I'm going to jump all over the place. We started out with about 12, and now we're down to about 8. And this is done. It's a club. I guess you could call it a student club, and I'm the school's instructional technology coordinator. I'm not a classroom teacher. So it's a club. This is a club for high school students ages 13 through 18. And anybody can participate in this at our school. So I definitely see that this would have application for a classroom teacher, but I think it's a wonderful thing for an administrator to do at a school, or an instructional technology specialist to do at a school, or a learning coordinator, or somebody like that who is looking to kind of directly engage with students. It's a wonderful model of learning, I think, for your particular community. And it's so many times during our conversations, we're having deep conversations at our school about what it means to teach and learn in kind of this knowledge age and in the knowledge economy. And I find we're constantly referring to the good work that our students are doing on Gator Radio as an example of what we can do now with technology and in kind of this new learning landscape that we find ourselves in. I mentioned earlier that we route our audio out from the Skype conversation to our Ustream channel, and we use a technique that's been developed at the Webcast Academy. I'm not going to get into actually how the streaming's done, because it took me probably, well, actually it's still taking me time to learn this, quite honestly. But there are a series of 6 assignments over at the Webcast Academy, and actually Jeff Lebo's in the chat. Daryl Garrison was one of my mentors and quote-unquote instructors for the session that I went through. But there's a series of 6 assignments that you can actually do on your own that will, and you can go and register and enroll right now at the Webcast Academy, and you start out by simply recording audio on your computer and posting it online, and then you finish with the skills to moderate and host a live interactive webcast using the techniques that they described. So why radio, boy? I've got a why radio. It's exciting. Why live radio? This should say it's exciting. It's kind of like why do actors from movie Hollywood go out to New York and participate in Broadway? There's something about the live format that's really exciting. It's real world. I think our students are doing real work when they produce these shows. These shows endure. They're out there. People can listen to them. I think they have an impact, and I think it's real work. It's multidisciplinary. Is this social studies? Is this science? Is this, who knows what it is? It's just real world. It's multidisciplinary, which I think which I think is fantastic. Everybody can participate. So if I could get 100 students in the Gator Radio experience to join the group, there would be a role for everybody. Not everybody wants to moderate live conversations, but people might want to participate in the post-production audio engineering or cleaning up the audio or whatever. There's so many different ways to participate. Everybody truly can participate. It's really based on student interest. So we talk about the things that matter to students, so it really becomes something that they're passionate about. And it's a way for us, it's a way for our students to, quote unquote, connect with the world, and we really are connecting with the world. Here's an example of some of the shows we've done in the past. We did back in the fall, of course, with the exciting U.S. presidential election. We did a preview show. We did a post-election show the night after the historic election. We actually talked to somebody who our students moderated a conversation with somebody in Chicago, actually Vinny Vrotny. Many of you know Vinny. We talked to Vinny, who was actually at Grant Park when Barack Obama and Michelle Obama came on stage and kind of accepted that they had won this historic election. That was awesome. Did a great talk last fall. Our girls kind of did this quote-unquote MySpace versus Facebook and all things social media. That was an awesome session, kind of to get the student perspective on new emerging trends in social technology. Of course, the really sad tragedy that took place in Mumbai last year. We actually had two of my friends from Milwaukee who are Indian Americans who spoke to us about their perspectives on the Mumbai tragedy, one being very conservative and one being very liberal, and they both have very different perspectives on the Pakistani-Indian relations. And that was a fascinating conversation and chat. And during that same show, we also spoke with a good friend of my wife's, Bryn Thomas, who's involved in a project out here in the Bay Area called Blue Planet Run. She ran around the world with this organization to raise awareness for global water issues. Their organization believes that water will become the next oil. And we were able to talk to her. We did a 2008 year in review show. Again, these are just some possibilities. These are the shows that we did, and hopefully if you're thinking about some sort of live radio show, it gives you ideas. Myanmar Reflections. We had a student over winter break go to Myanmar, and she came back and shared her photos and talked about all the things that she learned on that wonderful trip. We did a U.S. inauguration excitement show. So after the inauguration, actually the night of the inauguration, all of the, many schools here in the U.S. were, glued to, watching, perhaps had assemblies, and we all watched the inauguration and the excitement. So that night we actually had a Gator Radio Experience broadcast, and we spoke to a woman who was on the steps of the Capitol, who was there and watched in person Barack Obama being sworn in as the President of the United States. She's in her 60s. She's an African-American woman, and I'll tell you what, to hear her perspective on what that meant to her, she didn't think she would ever see this day. And there she was on the Gator Radio Experience, having this wonderful, rich conversation with our students about what it meant to her and how she had, the kinds of things she saw in the 60s with JFK and Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy being assassinated, and she didn't think she would ever kind of see this day. So she shared what that meant to her with our girls. And then, of course, she also shared, hey, wasn't Michelle Obama's, or what'd you think about Michelle Obama's ballroom gown? And so the girls had a fun, light conversation. Some liked Michelle Obama's gown, some didn't, and I didn't really have an opinion because, like any other male, I really didn't notice her gown. So we also did an EarthCast 09 prep show where we had EdTech Talk community member and Puentes El Mundo member and World Bridges member Jose Rodriguez come on the show. Jose is kind of an expert webcaster, and he came on the show, and this was probably in January or early February, to talk to our girls about EarthCast 09. And if any of you, we'll talk a little bit about EarthCast. EarthCast was this 24-hour webcast-a-thon which took place on, which for the past 2 Earth Days it took place. And so Jose participated in EarthCast 08, and so came on Gator Radio in February and kind of told the girls about what they could expect and gave them some ideas in preparation for that. I mentioned earlier that we talked with students and teachers in Victoria, Australia about the tragic bushfires that took place there. And what happened here is, of course, we have bushfires in California. So all of a sudden it turned into this wonderful exchange where students, or where people on both ends of the call here in the Bay Area of California and in Australia, I think we're able to gain a greater kind of level of empathy for one another. You know, we have seasonal fires, and actually fires now that are out of season and that are most likely caused by some of the climate issues we're dealing with. So our students were able to share their experience and compare and contrast those to the tragedy that took place in Australia. Of course, EarthCast 2009, our Gator Radio Experience team took 3 hours of EarthCast 2009. We actually talked to 6-year-olds about their website that they're developing. It's called the Earth Savers Club for Kids. We talked to a gentleman in Madison, Wisconsin about eating locally and sustainable food systems. And we also talked to somebody who introduced Barack Obama about 2 or 3 weeks before Earth Day at a Clean Tech press conference in Washington, D.C. We actually talked to this guy. You know, it was so cool that our girls had the opportunity to do that. So this is who we've talked to as of May 25th, 2009. You can see little dots there in the U.S. You can see a dot in Tokyo. You can see a dot in Australia. You can see a dot in northern Argentina, in Jujuy, Argentina. And of course, we talked to girls during EarthCast 09 in Shanghai, at Shanghai No. 3 Girls School. That was a fantastic talk as well. We actually talked to a gentleman in Holland, and we talked to a group of students in Italy. But this is what it could look like. The possibilities here are endless. We could talk to anybody in the world who's willing to talk to us. And I think that's pretty cool. This is what, hopefully in 50 years, when I'm still doing the Gator Radio Experience, the map will look like that. I'm gonna speed ahead here because I have somebody that's a lot more interesting than me who I think we need to talk to right now. And we're going to talk to Sam Cecil, our music expert. Sam, if you want to come on the show and introduce yourself, you'll see a screenshot here of many of the different bands that Sam has linked up with. Hey, Sam.
Hi. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you great. You want to talk a little bit about kind of your role in Gator Radio Experience and exactly kind of what you do as far as the music segment goes?
Sure. So you can see the slide. This is a majority of bands that we've put on the show. And I have a little bit of a different experience than the other people who are involved in Gator Radio because, as Mr. Montagne said, this show is really based around what our interests are. And I'm very interested in music and up-and-coming bands and kind of how the whole independent music scene works. So my role with the show is that I get bands who we can play their music on the show. And normally playing music on the show is kind of a problem because you have to navigate around the copyright laws and it just becomes a really big hassle. But when you choose independent bands to feature, they haven't been signed to a record label yet, and they don't have as many sort of promotional copyright ties, and they're really just trying to get their music out and have people hear them. So from a band's point of view, it's a great thing for us to ask to play their music because we're just promoting them. And for us, it's great because we don't have to pay them anything, and, you know, then we have music to play. So, Mr. Montagne, is there anything else that any direction I should really go with the music here?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Do you want to talk about some? So, how do you? what about the copyright issues and that sort of thing? This is something we talked about early on. A lot of the students wanted to play, like, I don't know, Coldplay songs.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to play a lot of songs from like 1981, but none of you seem to be too interested in that. But do you want to
yeah,
talk
not
about
so much.
you want to talk about the copyright a little bit and how you kind of seek their permission, how you kind of network with these bands, and then will you speak a little bit to the feedback that you're getting from these bands?
Sure. So copyright laws they seem really scary, but in actuality, if you, as long as you don't get in too big of trouble, they're pretty easy to understand. The reason we can't play music on shows is because of, the broad term copyright laws. Music is signed to the record label, and people have to pay to use it. It stops being so much of the artist's work, and it becomes the label who signed them, who's getting them their paychecks, who's putting them on tour, who's getting them, plays on big radio stations like, any sort of radio station that you would listen to. That's a problem because we would have to pay them a royalty to use their music, and like we mentioned, we don't have any sort of a budget. So the way we get music is I find independent bands who are both local and not local. We featured people from New York City, from Redwood City. That was Punchface. I saw a shout out to them in the chat. Really like that band. We featured bands from, I think, like Michigan, just really all over the United States. And these bands they're just starting out. So the way a band, I'm going to assume that a lot of you guys aren't in bands and aren't really familiar with how this works. But when you start a band, no one really knows who you are. But in this social networking scene, bands get Facebooks, they get MySpaces, they get BuzzNet. I'm not sure if you guys know what that is, or a Pure Volume. These are all just ways to have their music shown. And I just find them. I have a magazine that I read called Alternative Press Magazine that features small bands every month that I make sure to check out. I have accounts on all these social networking sites, and I have friends who are friends of bands. I have friends who are in bands and who are friends with other bands, and so it's just kind of this spiderweb network of who knows who in the music scene. And I've been kind of researching bands for 2 or 3 years now, and when I was really thrilled to be part of Gator Radio because I can actually put this talent to good use. And so the way I get these bands is I'll send them a message on MySpace, or I'll email them or their promotion person, and I'll say, hey, I'm Sam Cecil, I'm with Gator Radio, and we were wondering if we could play your music. And usually the bands are small enough that they don't have they don't have a record label that has too many ties on them. They're still in charge of their own music. The music rights belong to the artists, not the actual record label. So they'll say, I've only ever once gotten turned down, and that's because the band they were about to go on tour, and they just released a new CD, and they were kind of frazzled, and they were going to be played on other radio shows, and their promotion person was telling them, let me handle all this. So they didn't totally know what to do, so I ended up going with another band. But for the most part, the bands say, we'd love to be featured. They want to have their music played for people like you guys to hear, and they just want to be heard. So it's a win-win situation. I get their music. We either stream it from MySpace, or sometimes I actually have the band CDs or demos. And the way we play it on the show is I upload it to a page on Noodle where Mr. Montagne can access it, and then that's how we play it during the show. I write the script that we all collaborate on. I know Mr. Montagne mentioned that that's one of the ways that we meet. Since we don't have any face-to-face meetings, we all collaborate on this Google Docs script. And I make sure to write a little blurb about, how cool the band is and why you should go buy their music, and then little in-between sections for introducing the next song and talking a little about where you can find their music, where they're from, where they've been featured, just stuff like that. And in terms of feedback from bands, they usually really like to be featured. I know my parents were not entirely thrilled when I started talking to, band guys and knowing people through social networking and things, but I go to a lot of shows, like rock concerts. I was actually at one last night, which is why I didn't totally get a lot of sleep. But these bands are really nice people, and they really want their music to be featured. And when you're approached out of the blue from someone in Northern California being like, I would like to play your music and to have people know who you are so that they can buy you money, that's what they hear when I ask them to be on the show. So I've gotten all sorts of thank yous. I've gotten really nice, heartfelt emails. I got backstage passes to one of the first bands we featured, We Shot the Moon. That's kind of a weird band name, but they came to play near my town, and they knew who I was, and they're like, oh yeah, come hang out backstage with us. They were really nice about it, and they were really thrilled that I had put them on the show. Probably one of the coolest ones, Mr. Montagne really liked this, is I featured a band called Brave Citizens who are on this little slide. I actually just saw them again live last night. Fun fact, they got better since the last time I'd seen them live. And they had just released a new CD, and because I put them on the show, they sent me a deluxe version of their new EP. It hadn't been released yet. It was one day early. They just sent it to me, and they're like, oh yeah, thanks for putting us on the show. Here's a free copy. And so I was excited that I got a lot of free stuff. And yeah, are there any other questions from the chat that I should be answering, Mr. Montagne?
Yeah, that's a good point. While I'll pull a question out of the chat room, which one of these bands do you think might have, people like me who are 60?
Sorry, your audio is talking. I can't hear you.
Oh, I was just asking kind of a silly question. Other people like myself who are like 60. One of these bands would you start a...
Wait, I can't hear anything. What's your question? Which one of these bands I would start you off listening to? Whoa there.
Go with that question, Sam.
Okay.
Sam, yeah, both help him.
Sorry.
Sam?
Sorry,
Well,
guys.
you also want to know what to listen to.
You can all hear me?
I was just asking I was asking a silly question. Which one of these bands
Yeah,
do you think
would be recommendations for you guys? Well, I put Cloud Cult as a band that I put on the show for the Earthcast 2009, and I personally, I'm just going to be honest, I didn't really like their music that much, but they were a really green band. They've done a lot to help the environment, and they're pioneering in the whole green music scene. So I put them on the band, and we got a lot of feedback. Basically, everyone except for me seemed to love them. So you guys can check out Cloud Cult, I guess. Mr. Montagne really liked that. Other bands that I would recommend, The Ruse is on this little slide. They are really good. I sincerely like them. Let's see. Someone mentioned Punch Bass before. They're a little harder rock. I don't know if you guys like a little punk edge in your music, but Punch Bass is friends with my brother, and so I know them. I got to go backstage and interview them and really talk to them. They're really nice guys. Brave Citizens, always a good choice. Cloud Cult is on here. Other than that,
Sam,
just look at the slide. Say it again?
Sam, Daryl in the chat room asked a really good question, and I think it leads me to think about a lot on... Oh, shoot, my audio keeps cutting out.
That's okay.
Sam, can you hear me? Crap.
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay, well, Daryl asked a question. What different kinds of music do you seek out? We talk a lot about our audience for Gator to broadcast for. Do we just want to broadcast for our school community? Do we want to broadcast for our local? Want to broadcast for the world? We try to be to go beyond the boundaries of our school. So, and I know that's something you think about.
Yeah.
Matt, I want to cut in here. We're getting close to the hour. In fact, we only have a couple minutes left, and you may have some closing thoughts. I know I want to thank Sam and you for being participants today. A really excellent presentation. You know, I keep on learning more things from you, Matt. I'm glad you're my friend because you have so much to offer, and the fact that you've inspired someone like Sam to take off with this is just really, really exciting. But do you have some final words before we turn it over to Kim to finish up?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for listening in today. Hopefully, a scattered presentation, live student webcasting is all about. I want to thank Sam for coming on today to share her last official day of class. So thank you, Sam, for your knowledge about kind of the experience. So no, just thanks to the Classroom 2.0 team.
Okay, thanks very much, Matt. I am going to turn it over now to Kim. She has some advertising. Great, more events to participate. Go ahead, Kim.
Thanks, Lorna, and thank you, Matt and Sam. And thank you, everybody. A few announcements before we proceed to our survey. Steve Hargadon, our founder, has created the Future of Education, another NEEM community. And next week there'll be some more interview sessions on Wednesday, June the 3rd at 7 p.m. and 4 p.m. Pacific. A session on virtual schools, models that really work, with Liz Pape and John Watson. Will be a session hosted by Chris Walsh. Steve will be interviewing them. And a session on June the 3rd on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. Another interview session about student participation in building the learning environment. So join Steve Hargadon for those two sessions on Wednesday. On June the 4th, Thursday, Steve will be interviewing Maya Frost on the new Global Student. And as part of the PBS Summer Series, Steve will be interviewing Bob Sprinkle, Alice Barr, and Cheryl Oakes about summertime and the PLN, the Professional Learning Network, part of the extension of the EdTech Talk group that Matt is part of, as well as where we kind of all got our start, Peggy and I, and Lorna, and Matt. So that'll be a great extension for you to join next week. Also, Classroom 2.0 Live, the Beginner Series, Part 3 of the Go Wild with Wikispaces, will have our next session on June the 10th, that Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and Thursday at 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Time. So join for the last part of the Go Wild with Wikispaces session, and that's a great session. So please join Sue at that time. And on June the 6th, next week, next Saturday, we're going to have Lisa Thuman for Google search tips. And what can you do with Google search besides basic keyword searches? And this is going to be a fantastic session, and things that you just were not aware of, and ways to do fantastic Google searches. And it's amazing the things that you can do and the new tools that are coming out. So be sure to join us next week, and I'm sure there'll be things that you weren't aware of and ways to do searches that you will be surprised. So please join us next Saturday for Google Search Tips with Lisa Thuman. And I'd like to extend a very special thanks to Matt Montagne and the Gator Radio show host, Sam. And we're hoping that Natalie could join us today. and Steve Hargadon, who's our founder of Classroom2.0.com and thefutureofeducation.com. And thank you so much to everybody who joined today and participated in our show live, as well as those who are listening to the podcast or the recorded video. And especially to Illuminate for providing this forum for us to meet each and every week. We thank you for everybody who participated live and virtually. And we have a survey, and that's also in our Share tabs. And I'm going to go ahead and put our Share tabs link in the chat, as well as I'm going to post the Share tabs in the session as well as in the chat. And then I'm going to also post the survey link. And please give us feedback. And there's also a place in there to give feedback to Illuminate. But we also appreciate you giving feedback to us on the sessions and the information that was in the session today. We greatly appreciate you doing that. And if you find the session helpful. So please take a moment to give us feedback. That is greatly appreciated. And please make sure that you join us next week for Lisa Thurman and Google Search Tips. And thanks again, Matt and Sam, for joining us today. And we hope to see you next Saturday for Google Search Tips. And so have a great day, everybody, or a great evening, or a great afternoon, whatever time zone it is. Take care, and thanks again. Bye-bye.